Hello, I'm sharing with you today one of the pages, art journal pages, that I created with my group that comes to me every fortnight. And we have been creating an art journal over a number of months. We created the covers first of all, and then I keep adding pages to it. So this is one of the pages that I created with them. It starts off with stamping some texture, just a general stamp in the background. This is a PaperArtsy stamp. I'll list all the materials underneath the YouTube video. But this is to just get some texture down, and you can see there that I'm not just stamping and re-inking every time, but also adding in some second and even third or fourth generation stamping. And again, another PaperArtsy stamp, this time a circle. I don't want to fill in all of the background, I want to leave some white, and I know that some of this will get covered up anyway because I'm planning on adding some paper. But in the first instance, just want to get some general texture down. So the size or the design of these stamps isn't really that important. It's just to get some black down on the white, break up the page, start getting some texture down. And then I found an old piece of scrapbooking paper. I have no idea what make or collection or anything this paper is. I don't even know how long I've had it, but I found it amongst my papers and thought that it would be, I just like the colours, I thought it would be good to add into this page. What I was kind of hoping for was something that did have a relatively small flower pattern, so that was the other thing that attracted me to this one. So I prefer torn edges to cut ones, again more texture, so that's why I've torn the pieces. Usually I would go for an odd number, so it's actually unusual here that I've gone for 4, but usually I'd go for 3 or 5, maybe even more, but again you'll see that I do actually add in more pieces later. So for the time being I'm just getting these down with some matte medium, which means that I can glue them down with that. I can also go over them to make sure that they're flat and that there are no air bubbles underneath. Being matte medium, it means that it gives it a good tooth still. I can still add stamping or anything over the top, and also because it's matte it doesn't reflect the light and therefore it makes it far more invisible, well really invisible. You can't see where the glue comes out from underneath the papers, or that I've even gone over the papers with it. If it was a glossy medium or glue, then you would see where the light reflects. So that's quite an important thing to look out for when you're choosing what to glue papers down with. So now that that's fairly dry, I don't think I even necessarily left it to dry completely, but you certainly don't want it very wet before you cut the papers, because if you do cut them then it's likely to tear. So I'm just trimming off the excess that sticks out from the page itself. And I've got some paint markers here. These are acrylic paints, but in a crayon form, a felt pen type form, that are by Art by Marlene. And I'm just mimicking the flowers that are on the paper. So I'm just drawing some rough circles, almost using a dotty kind of motion really, to not have anything too perfect. So I'm adding those in between and overlapping the stamping. And you'll see there that I've actually added so that they also overlaps the paper. So where some flowers are torn, I've actually extended those onto the white background. And a good technique, if your paint, for example, there doesn't perfectly match the colour of your paper, then take the paint onto the printed flowers. So that means then that your flowers on the paper become painterly as well, and everything will automatically blend. You're extending the paper onto your page. So here I'm using another colour to give more depth, add more depth to the flowers, make them a little bit more 3D, a little bit more interesting. And you can see there that I've extended that onto the printed flowers as well to make everything blend better. And I just kept going over those flowers until I got them to the sort of size and texture that I wanted. Don't hesitate to just keep going back over. You don't feel the need to sort of have something perfectly done once and that's it. And this is art journaling. It's about experimenting. It's about just taking the time that you want to do something that pleases you, and things won't always please you straight off either, you know. So that's why I say, if you find that the colour doesn't match perfectly, that's fine, then just take it onto the things that you're trying to match and then it will. So that green, the flowers have green centres, so I've added some green and then a sort of darker grey onto the flowers and taken them onto the printed ones as well as my own drawn ones. Now, I love hot pink and orange together, so it's no surprise that I've chosen a piece of orange paper to add in as well. But clearly it wouldn't take too much orange on there, so I've torn this into much smaller pieces, and I've played around with where I think some of that orange could go. So I'm just surveying, testing out, a little bit here, a little bit there, what do I think? And I actually quite like the smaller bits with the rectangles, that those rounded rectangles that I've stamped in the background, because I think it sort of mimics the same design. So that's what I've gone for there, just adding in a few little bits and pieces. And again, stand back, see what you think. It's not stuck down yet, you can change your mind, play around. You can, don't spend too long, you can spend forever playing around with, does this bit go here or does this bit go there? Probably doesn't matter that much in the end. So once you feel that you've got something resembling what you want, then get the glue and commit. There's very little that you can't undo or redo afterwards in some way or another. It's not possible to make mistakes when you're art journaling, really. If something doesn't please you when it's stuck down, then there's always something you can put over it to change it to what you want it to be. I always say that if you don't like it, then it's just not finished yet. So just keep adding layers or keep adding bits and pieces until you think, oh yeah, that's okay now, that's good. It's not that I don't put something down and then think, actually maybe that was a mistake, or that I don't think that actually I don't like that so much after all, but you just keep working at it until you get the bits and pieces that you do want and that you like the final layers. So now I've decided to add in some more orange on the stamped circles. So I've just taken the duo acrylic marker that I have there, and just roughly, very roughly, because they're just scribbled circles anyway that are stamped, so I'm just scribbling on some orange. So again, be led, I'm being led by layers underneath as to what I want to add on top each time. This was not planned. This is completely you know, I'll use this, I'll use that. So maybe I went over top with the orange circles there. You can see I added in more than there are actually stamped onto the background as well. And now for some complete contrast, I'm going to use some blue acrylic paint. This is a PaperArtsy Fresco paint, which has also got a matte finish. And I'm using an Art by Marlene stencil there. It was part of the advent calendar. One of the freebies, one of the gifts I should say, in the advent calendar. So I'm using that stencil to add in a little bit of a different colour. Orange and blue are opposites on the colour wheel, so this is a complete contrast. And I'm overlapping the stamping and the papers that have been added to the background. So this is building another layer, more depth. Now, depending on your taste, you might look at that and think that's a hot mess. I may well think that myself as well. But I'm continuing to work at it. I'm continuing to add bits and pieces where I think that it needs a little bit of blue, a bit more that pops. I have no idea at this point what I'm going to use as a focal point, anything. I'm just enjoying playing with the colours and the different layers, the different motifs, the different patterns. So back to some hot pink, picking out the flowers again. And this is another Art by Marlene stencil from the advent calendar. So this has got circles and it mimics the flowers that are on the papers. It mimics my painted flowers as well. And that's a PaperArtsy paint called Bougainvillea. Some of that paint's getting quite faded now, there's not enough on the sponge. So I decided I wanted to make those stand out a little bit more. So I added some more paint. And again, we still want to leave some white showing through. This isn't about covering everywhere. And you can certainly leave larger areas of white. If you do think this is a bit of a hot mess, then for your taste, you probably would want to leave more white. I often do as well. It's just, you know, I'm just playing. So that certainly is a busy, multicoloured background now, but then that's what I like. And I love pink, orange and teal colours together, so if you followed any more of my work, it won't surprise you that I've put those together. So now I want some contrast back into the page, so I've gone back to the same stamp and I'm stamping over again in black. We've still got some white background, so I'm adding some black for contrast. In the classes that I teach, I like to explain not only what I'm doing, but why I've made those choices. And so to say to you that I'm adding contrast, that's what I'm doing. It's not just saying, oh, I'm stamping in black. I'm explaining to you why. I want to be able to share the techniques. And again, maybe I'm overdoing it here. I certainly did regret having those 3 circles to the left so much in line. I wouldn't normally do that. I would prefer to have them more random. It looks to me that's too linear. So that's why again I've picked up the paint and blended those back in. To some extent it makes it look more as a chosen pattern to have the 3 in line. And again, you know, adding in some orange, but then with my finger just dabbing some off as well. And I decided to go back in and, you know, get the level of contrast that you feel is right for you. A bit more colour, a bit more black and white. But it means then that I've got a good range of values from white through to pure black on that page. And I found another piece of paper completely unrelated to the first, but happens to have the same shade of green, and I'm cutting out some leaves to add to the background. And I also found that on the other side of this paper there were some hearts in the same shade of green, so I decided that I would save those and cut the leaves out of other parts of the paper. It was a bit of a bonus find, really. Again, I would have liked there to be an odd number of them, but there were only actually 2. I did save some of the other circles to perhaps add on as well, but I decided against those in the end. But I cut several leaves, as you can see there, and decided to add them in. They do get a little bit lost when I put them on the page like that. I decided they weren't really standing out enough. I did cut the hearts with a black border, so they stand out better. So I took some black ink and a brush and brushed that onto the leaves to get them to stand out more. Gives them a bit of a shadow, a little bit of shading, and they stand out more like that. Again, it's just more texture. It's another layer at the moment, apart from the paper that's collaged on. The background is one layer, the stenciling, the stamping, it's all a flat layer. So I'm just adding in a little bit more texture now with the leaves and the hearts. And I'm really pleased to be able to use up some old papers as well. That's always good. A bit of a stash buster. So again, I'm using matte medium to glue those down. It means that again, the leaves are quite fine, and it means that the glue doesn't show from behind the leaf, and I can make sure they're well stuck down and not going to catch or lift off at all. And then with those in place, it was time to turn to what I was going to use as a focal point. Something that needed to be able to stand out from that busy background. while a black and white image would have been good. I actually found something amongst my Art by Marlene embellishments. I think this was the Fabulous Women pack, and the enormous bow on her head, or whatever that's meant to be, a big hat, was just the right level of pink, and despite being the same colour, she actually does stand out quite well, and of course being glossy, that helps as well. So I glued her down again with matte medium, and then I've gone round with an Stabilo All pencil, which is a watercolour pencil that goes over any surface, and I've outlined her and then activated the colour with the water brush, and that's giving her a shadow and making her stand out more. Because she's glossy paper, it also means that if I get any black onto the actual image, I can easily just wipe it off with my finger, because it's water soluble, and on a glossy paper it's very easy to lift. So I soften the shadow as well with my finger around her. And then for some text, again, Art by Marlene pad, I trimmed the papers, or the stickers, down to the size that I wanted, rather than sticking it down as a block. So only look back to see what you have achieved. I thought that was a good one, and again, black and white stands out well on the busy background. So despite them being stickers, I just put them down very lightly to start with until I got the place that I wanted, and then went over them to stick them down a little bit more to make sure that they were fully stuck, and then again to give them some shadow to make them stand out even more with the Stabilo All pencil. So I went round each of the words, particularly to the left and underneath, to give them a bit of a shadow, make them stand off the page a little bit more. But I actually did go around all of the whole thing, the whole word, and that's partly because the stickers do have a white edge, so I wanted to get rid of that. So again, activating it with the water brush. And you can see that does make a difference. The Stabilo All pencils are incredibly strongly pigmented, so a tiny amount gives you a very black line once you activate it. It does lift easily with water if you feel that you've put too much, but equally you can go back over it. You can, really play with how much black you have until you're happy with the amount. You can also use paper towel to lift some of the colour if you feel you need to. You could have a similar effect with any black watercolour crayon, I'm sure, but as I say, the Stabilo All ones are very pigmented, and I don't say that because I have any attachment to the company, just the case. So then to frame the page, I just trimmed off a bit of excess again, and then took a black paint marker and went round the whole page. This is actually destined to be cut into two, because we're using a 6" by 6" 15 centimetres by 15 centimetre journal. So we've been creating the pages as 6 by 12 and then cutting them in two. So that's one thing to add, perhaps, that the entire time that I've been creating this page, or particularly putting down the focal point and the text, I've known that it's going to be cut into two, so I won't go over the centre part. And there we have the finished page.